Hey there, improvement nerds. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, where we dive deep into all things continuous improvement, one nerdy insight at a time. Today's episode is all about accountability. Yes, that word that usually shows up right before someone gets blamed or burned out. But what if we told you accountability isn't the problem? It's actually the solution. Joining me is Laura Hayes, a leadership coach, educator, and founder of Ground Rules Consulting. Laura started her business because she believes no leader should have to figure out this stuff alone. The responsibility is too great and the stakes are too high. With a master's in teaching and leadership from Butler University and certifications in Gallup, StrengthsFinders, DISC, 5 Behaviors, Enneagram, and more, Laura works with teams to build strong foundations by redefining what accountability really means. If you've ever been told to hold your team accountable and wondered to what exactly, this episode's for you. So let's get into it as we continue to wage war against bad process. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today's episode is all about the topic that might not sound exciting at first, accountability. But trust me, by the end of this conversation, you're going to see it in a whole new light. Joining me is Laura Hayes, a leadership consultant and accountability coach who's on a mission to make accountability not just meaningful, but dare I say fun. Thank you, Laura, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mark.
So I've heard you say that accountability isn't the problem, it's the solution. Can you walk us through what you mean by that?
Sure. When people say, oh, I have such a lack of accountability, it's such a problem. It's really not. It's just your solution. The problem is confusion. And so the output is we're not accountable, which is a pretty fuzzy word. I mean, accountability has a lot of meanings, kind of like the word communication, has a lot of meanings to a lot of people. But no, if you have a lack of accountability problem, that's your solution. Your actual problem is confusion and a manager ineffectiveness problem.
Well, what kinds of confusion do you typically see in teams that say they're struggling with accountability?
Well, when I ask people, I've done this one time, what's your most important goal you're going after this quarter? And I had a team of managers one time, and I told the director to be quiet. And I asked everyone their opinion, and 10 people gave me 10 different opinions. And then the director spoke up what his was, and not one of them matched. Exactly. If we don't know what we're going after, what's the most important thing this quarter? Well, we're surely not going to accomplish it, but what does that mean we're all working on? Opposite, opposing things. In fact, when we talk about the word priority, until 1950, it wasn't plural. It was only singular. So we say on teams, do you know what's of the most important right now? Do you know what your expectations are? Do you know what a win looks like? If you go home, do you know internally if you've had a good day? Those are the types of things behind the scenes where we all have different thoughts and feelings and expectations, and we're running a million miles an hour, just not in the same direction.
Do you think some of the confusion may also come down to teams not knowing what accountability is?
For sure. So we say the word communication is the most ill-defined word in the English language. And I would say second ranking is the word accountability. People simply mean, I'm not getting what I want. What I want on my team, what I want out of my people, I'm not getting it. So I often challenge people, and I'll challenge you, Mark. Take a piece of paper and write down, what is your definition? Give me one sentence. What's your definition of accountability? If I said, Mark, give me your definition, what would you say it is? I'll write one too, and we'll see what we have. We'll cross-reference.
You want me to write it right now?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I'm going to count how many words we have in common. I have 9 words total. All right. What's your definition, Mark?
I have one word. That's why I went quicker. I would say accountability falls under the umbrella of ownership. So when I think of accountability, I think of ownership. So
very common response.
What's that?
Very common response.
Yeah. So maybe in the context of work, ownership of one's outcomes. I've heard it described once before that accountability is like having a designated driver or being a designated driver, where you just don't make promises, but you ensure that all your responsibilities get home safely. So
okay.
I also think accountability is being a good teammate, maybe to do your part to accomplish a higher goal. I didn't write all that down, but I'm just thinking about it.
So my sentence, I said the ability to follow through and do what you said you would do, which the essence there is responsibility and ownership. But when I asked people this, I said, notice how many words we had in common. I think you had the word the and maybe of. So if two of us don't have the same definition, what are the chances anyone on your team does, or those who your managers are leading? And I always say that's not fair. It's not fair that we're walking around judging everyone by our definition of accountability, and they're judging us by their definition of accountability. So instead, we need a common language. Over the years, I've done a lot of research, and I have landed on Bruce Gordon's work on the accountability ladder. There's 8 levels. If you Google it, you're going to see the 8 levels. It starts with denial. You're just unaware. Level 2 is blame. Not my department. No one trained me. We call that sometimes a blame storm in cultures. And a lot of teams get stuck there because they think the goal was to get the responsibility off me. I didn't drop the trash on the floor, so I don't pick it up. And yet that's level 2. We want to get all the way to level 8, which is the most powerful, which is find and implement the solution. And so when I talk to teams, I say, here's the thing. You don't have a common definition that you could even objectively hold people to or teach people. And I'll pause for a moment because we talk a lot about Gen Z. It's kind of in the air, Gen Z, all the Gen Zers coming into the workforce. But one of the things we're noticing is, just like with any generation, but especially this one, they need to be taught accountability. Technology has taken a lot of practical, pragmatic accountability away. You didn't have to stop and plan. You could just send a text. And so the idea that you could objectively point to something that's outside of you, you can put this up on your wall and say, hey, I'm noticing I'm hearing a lot of excuses. That's level 3. How can we go higher? Versus unkindly judging them behind the scenes and just yelling, be more accountable. You might as well yell, speak French. You'll get the same outcome. We have to stop and say, hey, this is what accountability looks like, and then model it. When you're not being accountable, own that. Say, I'm late today. Traffic was terrible. Wait a minute, I'm at level 3. What could have I done? I could have checked the Waze app. I could have looked on the news. I could have slept here last night. Like, model what this looks like. I think we all have this picture perfect view in our head that we're accountable. And let me tell you, we are not. So I would say you really need to have that common language on your team. What is accountability? And stop letting it be what everyone just thinks it is, that you're just judging one another by. That's very unhealthy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just trying to put that together in my head in terms of continuous improvement. And I've worked with some leaders that just want to walk around and point fingers and hold their staff accountable. But then when I ask them, holding them accountable to what, they don't have a definition for that either. I view it as a pyramid for accountability. You start with some kind of a standard, then you have to train to that standard, audit to that standard, and then you have that accountability, which you rightly say, you have to have a common definition of what that is. And I think as you work down that pyramid, just like standardization, you have to have something that's standard, a definition that everyone, the one best way, one current best way to do things. And when you have that and you're sharing the definitions with the whole team, then you can train to that and have a method, right? A way to train, a way to audit, and then understand what accountability looks like as a shared definition between that whole team. So I really like what you said there, and pointing out that we can't have just these differences of definitions or subjectivity. It just creates ambiguity, and we can't really hold people to standards or hold people accountable if we don't first define what we're talking about.
Sure. When we talked about confusion, imagine in a lean process, someone who really wants to do well, they're driven, they want to accomplish things, and you say, I want to hold you accountable, and they're looking at you saying, to what? Think of that internal frustration and confusion they're having, and how long are they going to be motivated? Like, we want that standard. We want to know where the line is. If you think about, we're all driven to win. We're all driven by the whole concept internally that I want to win. I'm looking at my own success. Let it be very clear where success is and how to get there. So we talk about confusion is unkind. So have a common language.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think are some major barriers to personal accountability?
Well, there's lots in terms of our personal accountability. When we think, if you just drew a circle around yourself, what stops my own accountability? And we know this from John Miller's work on the QBQ, that there's victim thinking. Those are your complainers. Why is this happening to me? The world's against me. You have your blame. Who dropped the ball? Who missed the deadline? And you have your procrastination, which everyone kind of thinks is a safe one, like, oh, I'm a procrastinator. But really, procrastination is where you start with a when question. When is my manager going to train me? You're simply outsourcing your power. So when we think about what's holding people back from that personal accountability, those are your three barriers. And I have found from coaching teams for this long that although all of them can be true at different times in our lives, there's usually one that sticks up that we're more prone to, kind of our default. So for me, I've noticed I can become a victim thinker real quick if I feel like I'm inconvenienced, if something feels unfair to me, really quickly, I'm in my head, I'm complaining, I'm frustrated. And so I notice for lots of people, they kind of have their default. They go to blame very quickly. They procrastinate very easily. So if you can become more self-aware and thinking, wow, if I had to pick one of those, which one do I tend to go to? And maybe you're like me. Maybe you can become a victim thinker real quick. What's cool about that is then you're kind of on alert for it. Do you know, like if you ever I bought a Toyota Camry years ago, and that week, all I saw were Toyota Camrys everywhere I went. You know, that idea? It's kind of like that. Once you decide which one you kind of are, you start to notice it. Well, first of all, you notice it in other people very quickly, but you'll notice it in yourself more. And it's kind of like the yo-yo effect. How far down does it have to go before you yank it back up? I now can catch myself in victim thinking very quickly. So that yo-yo doesn't go down very far. But what I love about his work is, okay, so I tend to be a victim thinker. You know, we tend to blame. What do we do about that? So when you're in those modes, say, okay, here's the question to go in behind that question. So when I'm in, why is traffic so bad? And I go behind that question and I say, okay, what can I do? What can I do to navigate this traffic? Well, I could put on a podcast. I can make a phone call. I could have left earlier and maybe I could have avoided this traffic. Now there's some creativity, some positivity, and I'm moving forward. I'm not stuck. Because when we're stuck behind victim thinking or blame or procrastination, that's really a dead end. You feel yucky inside, for lack of a better phrase, but you're not moving forward. The victim thinker isn't getting any better. They're just kind of stuck. And so what I love about the idea of this question, what can I do? Even if it's a small step, we talk about what can I do and what can I do right now? That's your way out of that. So we talk about how do we combat a lack of accountability within ourselves, and it's only within ourselves. I always make the joke, unless they're wearing a diaper, you can't change them. Well, what can I do internally? I can say, okay, what can I do? So Mark, I'll ask you, if you had to pick which one of those barriers possibly you may default to, procrastination, blame, or victim thinking, where do you think your default may go?
Well, I was thinking procrastination, but as you define them, I probably am tending more towards the victim thinking.
So I'll ask you this. So I'm the youngest of three. My personality, I'm a high I. If you know strengths, I'm a woo. When you think of your personality, your family of origin, was that modeled? Is that kind of what you saw around you?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And that's what I tell people. There's a reason we have these defaults, and no one's a criminal. Like, we're just human, but our opportunity is, what are you going to do about it? And so I am on a high alert to victim thinking in my own life. And I tell people, if you're around a victim thinker, don't go either direction. Don't empathize and don't argue. It's a lose-lose. Instead, simply say this: I hear that, but what are you willing to do next? So if you have someone who comes to work and let's say they're doing a continuous improvement project and it's all going badly, nothing's working. And they come to you with every reason and every excuse that it's not going to work. And just, the sky is falling, Chicken Little. For you in that moment, you would say, okay, but what could we do next? What are we willing to try? What could you do? And if you could narrow them in on just the next step, even if it is go get a drink of water, action conquers fear. So when we can think of what can I do? Follow-up question, what can I do right now? Momentum is what moves us forward and gets us out of that. Because once again, victim thinking and procrastination, blame, they're dead ends. We want to move forward. We want some action. So that's what I love about okay, what can I do? And I even tell people sometimes that's the simplest question you can think. If that's all you can think of, if that's the only question you come up with, land there. What can I do? Maybe it's go take a nap, but do something. Action conquers fear. So when I really think of those, I think of those are the things that are holding individuals back, and then it bleeds through the team. Because on the reverse, let's say you have someone who is never a victim thinker. That team's going to notice that. They're going to pick up on that and follow that momentum. So if you have maybe you're doing a Kaizen, maybe you're doing a Gemba walk, and you say, hey, I see a lot of challenges here, but here's something I think we can do. That momentum will be picked up around you. So you're the person who now you're that momentum, and you won't breed victim thinkers around you. The power in that is incredible.
I really like this. Just harkening back to our last podcast episode where we talked about our brains and how our brains are wired over long periods of time through what we observe and what we experience, like you were saying, hardwires us to act in certain ways. And you're giving us practical tips of how to break free from that, even if it's just the question behind the question and asking, what can we do? I love that, asking questions. That's what we do all the time as coaches. Are there any other good questions behind the questions to ask?
So we always say the formula for a QBQ, it starts with what or how, has the word I in it, and ends with an action. So my current IQ, my incorrect question is, why won't my neighbors take care of their dog in the middle of the night? My QBQ is, what can I do to navigate this loud dog? Which leads to action steps. I have sound machines. I have bright lights that shine when he barks. I've talked to them. I've sent a letter. When we think about your QBQ, just follows the formula, what or how, the word I in an action step. So that's why the shortest one is, what can I do? But let's say you have an employee who doesn't take feedback well. Okay, so why won't this employee take feedback well? So your QBQ might be, okay, how can I connect with this employee? Here's some action steps. Have you sat with them? Do you know their story? Do you know what barriers they're currently navigating in their own life? Do you know how they do like to receive feedback? Do you know their communication style, their personality? There's where you go to and you say, okay, I know the formula. So instead of so many people just go to HR and say, I need a new person, give me someone else. This person's not working. As if, we're making people behind the scenes and just going to output another one. We know that's not true. We have to be coaching the people in front of us. And so for managers, instead of being just frustrated and kicking your head against the wall, get creative. What can you do? Most of the time I found that the action step, the first one, is to have a conversation. Usually the next one is go get some training, read a book, watch a YouTube, up your management skills, up your own training. The amount of information that we have available to us is greater than any other time in our lives. So when we think about, hey, Mrs. Manager, Mr. Manager, what can you do? So many things.
That's great. You said that expectations are often unspoken, assumed, or misinterpreted. Why is that such a big issue in accountability?
Well, when we think about accountability, we are held to a standard. There's an expectation. Sometimes there's managers and there's leaders who are very good about speaking out those expectations, and sometimes they're not. So there's one thing we know when we measure team engagement. If you know of the Q12 from Gallup, the 12 things we measure, the top two that they say, what are the two things that if we want to know we have an engaged team, these two have to be true. So from Gallup, we know that the top one is I use my strengths every day. You have to be living in your strengths. They're your source of ease, energy, and enjoyment, your own personal fulfillment. But the second one is I know my expectations. What's so interesting that that's how we rank team engagement, and yet it ranks the lowest. So when I teach people, I say, not only do you need to speak your expectations clearly, you need to do it times 7. We know that people don't first hear you, they don't first believe you, and everyone takes in information differently. You have auditory learners, you have visual. So whatever your expectations are, you're going to repeatedly speak them. I say to the point, you want your teams to be able to do an impression of you. So you need to be very clear on speaking expectations, but then you have the other opposite side. Everyone has their own language of expectations. We call those the 4 tendencies. There's even a book about it, that there's different ways. So I always compare this. Think about your New Year's resolution. There's some people who have never made one in their lives. There's some people who make it and it lasts a week. I think, what do they say? I think February 2nd is the day when most people drop their New Year's resolutions. There's some people who make them and keep them and have kept one every year. I mean, you think about, there's all these different ways that people have held their own selves accountable or accomplished things in different ways. Well, that's because we all have different styles. We have different styles of expectations. So there's this one book called The 4 Tendencies, and she talks about you have this internal driver. You have your own language. And if you can tap into number 1, your own style, you can accomplish so much more. So let's pretend you knew that you were a rebel. You knew that you needed to buck up against a system to be able to accomplish something. And let's say your doctor says you need to drop 20 pounds. Well, you now know better how, you have more self-awareness, how to lead yourself well when it comes to, that's an expectation that you probably should meet if your doctor's telling you to. And then you fast forward, if you knew your team and their expectations and how they need to hear them, you've just turned up your leadership style on full alert when you think about your effectiveness as a leader. So Mark, I'm going to kind of tell you the 4 styles, and I'm going to see if you can figure out what style you think you might be.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. So we have the upholder. So they're going to easily meet any expectation that's either inner or outer. So inner is internally, you decide on your own, your New Year's resolution. Outer is what other people are putting on you. At work, everyone needs to have this report in by 5 o'clock. But what you need is you need a lot of clarity, crystal clear on what the expectation is. And you need people around you to be very dependable if you have to lean on them to accomplish that task. So that's called the upholder. It's a very small percentage of people, but that's the upholder. Then you have the questioner. So they're going to meet inner expectations easily, but ones that come from the outside, they're going to have to ask, what do we say, your 5 whys? They're the ones who are going to ask where this is coming from, why it matters. They're going to have to ask a lot of questions to be able to meet that outer expectation. We call those the questioners. So we have the upholder, the questioner, then we have the obliger. The obliger can easily meet outside expectations. They're very driven by external approval and the level of responsibility felt externally. Internally, they may think of the New Year's resolution really, really hard to meet an inner expectation. In fact, they're going to probably need to tell someone else so that you make that inner expectation an outer one. And then lastly, you have the rebel. The rebel resists any inner or outer expectations because they so value freedom and choice. They will then want to do the opposite of what is expected. Once again, this is another small percentage of people, but you have your 4 tendencies. You have the upholder, the questioner, the obliger, and the rebel. And in the sense of transparency, Mark, I'm going to tell you, I'm the obliger. I do know this about myself because I have to tell people, that I'm going to do something to make myself sometimes do it. So I'm self-aware that I'm the obliger. Do you think you know which one you might be?
Why do you ask that?
Why do I ask which?
I'm just kidding. I'm the questioner.
Do you think you're the questioner?
Yes, definitely.
Really? Okay. So,
Yeah.
so think about this. So let's say, when you've been in a job where you've had a boss or a manager, can you think of times where they would come and tell you of a change or something's going on, and internally you were resistant or you couldn't kind of sink your teeth into it because they wouldn't let you ask questions?
Yes. Yep.
When you think back, is that frustrating when you think back of those experiences?
Yeah. Yeah. Either that or they didn't know the answer to the question. So, yeah,
Oh,
and that would be very frustrating.
so that's funny because you're right. Sometimes people just take an expectation, they heard it, they're going to just communicate it out. They didn't know, they weren't a questioner, so they didn't ask where it came from, and they just spit it out to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what happened to me with lean, actually, my lean journey. The start of it was I had my superior said, "Hey, you're going to go learn this lean Six Sigma stuff, and you're going to have to go to a certain area of the country to do that." I asked what it was, and they didn't have an answer, which I thought was neat.
Well, and think about relationally. So, had they been able to give you more context and answer, would have your relationship with that person and that environment been better had they known that about you?
Yeah, and I'd have been able to make even a better decision about the work itself too. Uh,
Right.
it landed in the same spot ultimately, but yes, it would have made my put my mind at ease a bit more, help me not have to navigate through the unknowns as much.
Well, and when we think about the role of a manager and a leader, when you think about, let's pretend you had a person, maybe they're frustrated with you. Maybe they said, why can't he just get on board with what we're asking him to do? And what if that person had asked that why question, and then they had said, wait, what can I do? What can I do to help him navigate this? And they said, maybe I could read about his four tendencies. And they found this out about you. And all of a sudden, what a better leader they are to you when they come to give you expectations and thoughts and help you navigate your own leadership journey. So when you think about, like, let's all get better together, managers, if you knew this and were acting upon it, what a better relationship. And what did you just say? You would have had more ease.
Mhm.
Let's stop stressing people out. How about that?
Yes.
I will tell you, in all of the tendencies, although in Gretchen's book, she talks about it's not completely a personality typing book. And I agree. I have seen these tendencies. I'm an Enneagram coach as well as a StrengthsFinders coach. And I have seen these tendencies sprinkled throughout sporadically all the different personality types. And so when I think about your own level of self-awareness, your personality is what motivates you, how you see the world, how the world sees you. And so when I think about your expectation language, is what I like to call this, specifically when it comes to the inner and outer expectations. When you think about those are spoken and sometimes unspoken, think about, especially in your home and in your relationships, there's a lot of unspoken expectations going on. So if you can have this self-awareness to lead yourself well, what a powerful thing, especially when you do need to do things like change your health or save money or anything like that. Let's lead ourselves well, but also one another. How are we helping one another when it comes to the things that are going on in life, and getting a lot of clarity around what needs to be done and how can we help one another?
Let's talk about that. Like, where does accountability really thrive? I understand that maybe command and control culture is not good for that. What would you suggest for planting seeds for accountability to grow well?
You're correct. Control scenarios do not work. So when we measure accountability, one thing we notice in businesses, accountability thrives when the business operates as a safe communal environment. So when you're very transactional, do this, do that, do this now, not that. That's where we see the least amount of accountability. What's ironic to me, when you think about small businesses and how much embezzlement there is, I think there's a correlation there. When you are not treated well, when you are not known and understood, it's a little bit easier to kind of break the rules. There's a piece in your brain where you say, you don't care about me, I don't care about you. So it kind of makes sense to me that when we measure accountability, the higher the transaction scenario, the lower the accountability. So instead, what we see in areas where there's high accountability, they're high communal, which simply means you are known and understood. You're not treated like a number. There's someone who cares about you. There's someone who cares about what you want out of work. What are you trying to accomplish? Who are you coming to work for? We always say when you walk out the door, there's people at home that you're going to work for. And so we think about, what does that look like? How can you build more accountability? Well, turn the dial up on your communal safe environment. And when we say safe, that's not, well, I'm not afraid that the lights are going to fall on my head safe. That's pay to play. We assume that when we go to work, the lights aren't going to fall down on our head. We mean psychologically safe, which simply put says, I can say I don't know, I was wrong, I don't understand, or I have a different opinion without fear of judgment or mockery. So when we think about, we want really high accountability cultures, great. Turn up your safety and your communal activities. That's what's going to improve your accountability. We need people to make sure they feel like a human, not a number when they go to work. So Mark, when you're thinking, when we have lean environments, have you seen places where people come to work, do your 5S, go do this and go do that, and they can make lean very transactional? Have you seen this in environments you've gone into?
I have, yes.
I'm curious in terms of, we've all seen different environments, different cultures. Lean is so powerful. It has the power to transform. I mean, the creativity that can come out of a lean environment and what people can grow and truly thrive. I just see this as such a matchup. When you really want a truly lean environment, play to your strengths, really increase your communal and your safety environment, because you've just given lean the best chance to thrive when people really get to dig in. And lean, there's no walls. The creativity is endless there. So just the power behind it.
Yeah, we've come in and we've seen lean attempts that have been dead because there is maybe a more command and control style in their approach to it. And that's one of the things that we like to say is a bit different about us, that we do pride ourselves in questioning and creating psychological safety and taking small steps, really partnering with the frontline staff all the way through the executive level to help create a vision for what we're doing. And more times than not, we're successful with that, and just the approach that we take to it. And that's what lean really is anyway. It's not just a program of just go do, X, Y, and Z. If that's the case, you probably won't have long-term success with it. So I like how you're talking about where accountability thrives, because it does align perfectly with how we execute on our lean principles as well.
Well, like we started with, accountability, it comes off like a weapon a lot. In fact, when I talk to new leaders that I meet and I talk about that I come on site or I do virtual classes and I teach on emotional intelligence and your communication and accountability, and they all say, start with that. I want accountability first. And I say, nope, you can't have it first, because it'll come off like a weapon. Accountability is beautiful, but the interpretation, it can get a bad rap. And so I say we have to start with our emotional intelligence. We have to start with what we believe about people and grow our own self-awareness. We have to say, this is how we're going to communicate. This is how I'm going to give you feedback and receive feedback. And we have to practice that and come to terms with, this is what we do. Then you can talk about accountability. But notice it's very objective. The accountability ladder is objective. It's outside of us. It's not judgmental, and it's kind. That's what I say. When we're just judging one another, that is not kind. But objectivity is very kind. And so we think about, how can we, hold our own selves accountable? Like, that's step one. And we think about doing that for other people, make sure we're doing it in a way that's objective. Do you have a common language? Are you talking about how you're working on it yourself? And are you crystal clear with expectations times 7? We talk about accountability is not your problem, confusion is. Why does I know my expectations rank so low on the engagement survey? Globally, we are not good about communicating expectations and what a win looks like. So when we say, hey, even in lean, do you know what a win would look like? Is that crystal clear? Because that's how you're going to clear up confusion and get your accountability.
Absolutely. I like how you really define what accountability is and is not. What's one accountability myth you wish you could retire forever?
I wish I could retire the fact that it is a pill you swallow, that it's, people say, just hold yourself accountable. Like it's a simple concept that, what do people say? It's just common sense. All that language, I want to flush it because it's so much more. The actual, when we think about the actual elements of accountability, it's an internal drive. So unless you're in surgery on people, like it's internal to them. So instead of this common sense, this word just that we put around accountability, it's our own leadership capacity. So I want to flush that away. And I want people to say, let's get back to what can I do? What can I do to model this? What can I do to change it in myself? If you want to delete victim thinking from the world, you got to delete it in yourself. So that's what I would say. Get rid of this simplistic viewpoint of, it's just hold yourself accountable. It's common sense.
I love it. And I appreciate you coming on to talk to us today about accountability. And I know there's so many other topics that you could talk to us about. Where can people connect with you or learn more about your work?
Sure. You can go to groundrulescoaching.com, and I'm on LinkedIn under Ground Rules Coaching as well. But like I say, do you know how nobody went to college to become a manager? Right. I teach management skills. So often we promoted that operator to be a manager. And that's like saying, hey, carpenter, go be a chef. So let's all get better together. So you can connect with me on the website, LinkedIn, and there's even a contact page on the website if you want to have a talk or connect with me even more.
I hope our audience takes advantage of that. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, Laura, and maybe we can talk again soon. And I think it's time for a nap for me. My brain is telling me.
What can I do? You can take a nap. I like it. Thanks, Mark.
Just a little callback. Thanks for talking to us today. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
And that's a wrap, improvement nerds. Huge thanks to Laura Hayes for bringing the clarity, the candor, and the contagious energy to today's conversation. Who knew accountability could actually be fun? If today's episodes got you thinking differently about ownership, expectations, or your own accountability blind spots, head over to groundrulescoaching.com or find Laura on LinkedIn to learn more about how she's helping leaders grow with purpose, empathy, and practical tools that stick. And of course, if you're ready to take the next step on your improvement journey, whether it's lean, leadership development, or equipping your team with skills to thrive, check us out at the Green Dot Group. We're here to help you do more than just fix processes. We're here to build cultures of excellence. Thanks for nerding out with us. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who can use a fresh perspective on accountability. Until next time, keep improving, keep nerding out, and leave your processes better than you found them.